Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Mir, Ni hao, Buenos dias, Hesiche, Aquaba, Willkommen. What up, though? This is Café Mélangé, week número 36, 37, más o menos. And today we got a wee bit of lean in the angles, but that's alright. I have something specific to share, and I'll just get into it, and then we'll see what else emerges amidst that. So, in previous joints, I shared the notion about being a non-predator and non-prey. I specifically utilized the euphemism of the pachyderms, elephants, rhinoceri, hippopotami, even giraffes. All of these animals are herbivores. They eat plants. They don't eat other animals. They don't hunt and kill or scavenge the remains of other animals and other beings. They derive a livelihood, a life, sustenance from plants. This is not feeding off of or requiring to feed off of the life of others. Materially or even presumably psychologically, mentally. So, at the same token, aren't hunted by the predators generally. Predators, as predators are, go after whatever. But predators pretty much leave the hippopotami, the rhinoceri, the elephant eye, and the giraffe eye alone, because they're bigger than the lions and the tigers and the bears. Oh my. As well as the what's the other one that's missing from that one? Oh yeah, the wolves. So each of those predators leave those animals alone, and so that provides humanoids, and additional sentient beings of this earth and the universe with a paradigm, an example, a guidance, an encouragement for a middle ground, a middle path, a middle way, to not be a predator and to also not be prey. So when we apply it to the humanoid side, because like I said, I am not human, I'm not human because I'm not a predator. Humans are predators against other species, but also against other humans, socially, psychologically, and additionally. So, me not predator, and thus me not human. You can consult the U.S. Constitution about that as well. So anyways, middle ground example. So we know it exists. So then the consideration is for those who are humanoids, the jinns and the nagas, and the nephilim, and additionally the earthlings, the earth beings. How do we apply that amidst interaction and even proximate and intimate interaction, even breeding with humans? That's consideration. Honesty, sobriety, veganism, marital fidelity, and ethical economics. That's a very solid foundation for that middle path, that middle way. Ethical economics involving ethics of respect for native brethren, native humanoids of the land, consuming only vegan products, being non-exploitive when it comes to financing endeavors. That means not loaning anything, not charging interest, not even just not charging interest, but not even loaning anything, because loaning itself is predatory. There's a significant fundamental difference between, as I take the Scout's oath, there's a fundamental difference between loaning and investing. When you loan something, it doesn't matter what happens, what the person does with it, give me my money back. Particularly when it's on the streets, and additionally, I don't care what happened, you owe me, pay me. That's what a loan is. That's what the banks do. Oh, you can't pay your house note, we own it. Bye. That's what happens with student loans. And additionally, so that's what a loan is. It's antagonistic. It's predatory. It doesn't have a vested interest, a genuine vested interest in the person who's receiving the funds. There's an absence of a genuine relationship, a mutually beneficial relationship between the two cats. It's a predatory thing, and there is now a lot of times loans are repaid. Okay, then it's done. But it's not a matter of, anyways, an investment is like, yo, you want to do this? All right, here's the thing. You don't owe me anything for it. Like you don't have to pay me back. However, when it succeeds, I get a share of that. And so now the person giving the investment has a vested interest in the other person succeeding, because that's the only way the person is going to get a payback from it. And so it's not a matter of like if things go belly up or the pandemic happens or whatever else, like we don't care, pay me. It's a matter of like, oh man, all right, so what do we do? What can we do to make it work? Because that's what the nature of it. It's relationship, it's connection, it's mutually beneficial, it's genuine. That's the difference between debt and loans and then investment. So ethical economics don't do that debt, don't do the loans. It don't do that interest, pay me. It does investment, dividends. Yo, I'm gonna give you this, but we want to split it 50-50. All right, cool, let's roll. So that's part of the ethical economics. It's also a matter of fair labor and paying a fair price to not being exploitive in terms of working people. In addition, not just paying a fair wage, but like not working cats to death, literally. Not making cats do things that are wrong. And additionally, so not making sure cats are safe and healthy in the factory or whatever else. That's part of the ethical economics. Ethical economics also involves environment, being harmonious with the environment. I got a piece about that today, if I get to that, if I remember it. Peaceful with the environment, harmony, relationship, taking wisdom from our native brethren that says that we're all in relationship. And so if we want to be healthy and peaceful and harmonious, we got to have that within the trees and the bees and the birds and everything else, because we're all connected with each other. It's symbiotic. It's not a matter of exploitive, like, oh, we own this, we can do whatever we want, rape, pillage. Nah, we got to be in harmony. That's part of ethical economics. And then the other component of ethical economics is healthy for ourselves. Let's eat healthy, let's live healthy. And let's buy things and purchase things and invest in things that are healthy for ourselves, not just that taste nice and everything else that make us feel high or whatever else. It's a matter of like taking care of ourselves genuinely as well. So all that's part of ethical economics. So with that, along with the sobriety, the honesty, the marital fidelity, and the veganism, that's a non-predatory discipline. And that's fundamentally different than humankind has categorically, generally been, I'll say comprehensively been, like altogether been, since giddy up, since the recorded history of mankind. Regardless of the religion, regardless of the ethnicity, regardless of the nation, regardless of the politics, the economic system, whatever else, it's all predatory. So now there are examples of non-predatory and non-preyed upon people. All right. The door might be locked. You can try it. Sometimes it's locked. They might have a sign there to call in to open it up. You're welcome. There's a side door too that might be open if you want to try that. But I would try that first, because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm just letting you know. So there are examples, prophetic teachers that emerge. There are actually movements. There are even collectives within humanity that emerge to varying degrees of intensity of non-predatoriness. But we have these examples. There's Jainism. If you look at Jesus, the Buddha, Muhammad, Sallallahu Wasallam, Sallallahu Wasallam, Moshe Rabbeinu, Krishna, Sri Krishna, and additionally, all teaching a discipline of non-predatoriness. Guess he got in. So maybe the building is open at this point. We have that example, but then when it comes to like categorical, like community-wide, societal-wide practice of this, as a species, humanity has yet to do that, and so it's recognizable that because of that, humanity may be very safely identified as being a predatory species against other species, but also against other humans through those, particularly the unethical, predatory ethical practices. So, to be non-predatory means to be not human, effectively, and it's and people say, oh yeah, but you're still using the computers and this and the other. Well, the deer still walk along the streets and still utilize much of the infrastructure. And so I ain't saying this is a perfect science or a perfect discrimination, but much of it is a mindful intentionality within that. And actually it's fundamentally different. Or the behavior and the lifestyle is actually fundamentally different. And even though amidst the phenotype and additionally communication, and additionally being seemingly very human. Was it open? Did it work? There it is. Yeah. See, it's a hit and miss. Sometimes cats come up and I say it and they're like, yo man, I got it. What you talking about? I'm like, got somebody looking out for me. There you go. I hear you. We all do. Well, ultimately, love and peace to you, bro. So, hey. All right. So that's they're fundamental similarities, yet they're also fundamental distinctions. And when that distinction and that discipline is awakened within people, it's beneficial to have a certain intentionality. And so it's not a better than or worse than. It's just a matter of recognizing a different than. And that difference applies to the whole of humanity rather than any ism within humanity. And rather than just starting another ism within humanity either. So that doesn't. It's not a separatist thing. It's not an antagonistic thing. It's just an accurate and honest thing. So there's still interaction. So you know what? The brother just came in. There was somebody at the door who let him in. He said that's how he got in. There's a side door. Sometimes if there's a sign on there that says a number to call, sometimes they have that there. But it's like a hit and miss. Like you saw him coming out. He just went in and they opened the door for him. So if you knock on the window or something, somebody might come up. You're welcome. So it's not a better than, a worse than, or whatever, because that's predatory thinking. It's just a matter of different. And then in being different, understand how to be honest within that difference, how to be attentive to that difference. And so the process of transition is a matter of just recognizing how one is predatory at the moment and to just minimize that, to divest from those predatory practices. Each of those things that I mentioned before, and additionally, so I didn't recognize that we have needs, we have material needs, and additionally within this life, and to attend to those in a dutiful way. But then also to, like, when we see something as a want rather than a need, recognize, okay, so what's the purpose of this? What purpose does it serve? And do I actually need this? Is it necessary? What's the harm that's being caused? And is it beneficial for me to go without this at this moment? So. It's a gradual progress. Some steps might be larger than other steps, but the consideration is just being intentional with that. And again, in when I proclaim not being human, I'm actually genuine about that. And I know it sounds like hyperbolic or whatever. It's like maybe like, I don't know, say clickbait because I'm not clicking it, but it might sound just for effect or for show, but it's actually, one, actually accurate, but also two, dos. It's intentional, and it's an intentional matter of again, I'm repeating myself at this point, but it's an intentional in terms of being mindful of the predatory ways and to let go of those predatory ways and to invest within the non-predatory ways and the non-preyed upon ways as well. And that's one thing to be careful on. One thing I'm thinking about in terms of being preyed upon is like the genteel prey, the genteel predator. The smooth, it's not even pimp talking, it's like the mental manipulator who is very, very passive, and that's one of the things. cat who's like who conveys the notion of being wounded or vulnerable, sensitive, and additionally, but simultaneously, is an emotional predator, and it's kind of like that hurt rabbit or whatever, and then somebody else wants to go and help the person, and then they got their clutches, and the clutches ain't necessarily a matter of immediate consumption and killing the prey. It's a matter of just continually feeding emotionally, psychologically off that prey as well. And people might accuse me of doing that, and I have to like be honest about that and like investigate on myself, like, do I do that? But simultaneously, I'm increasingly observing this or evidencing this within my interactions with others as well. And so even then, when people do revert to that type of behavior and that type of tactic, it's not even necessarily intentional. For some people it is, but for some people it's just like the coping mechanism. So regardless of what it is, it's just a matter of being mindful and recognizing when one is being preyed upon, and how to protect against that. And when it is a person who's being vulnerable, there's probably terms for that. Psychology has a lot of terms, and Western society has a lot of terms for these things. But when a person does exhibit that or practice that type of behavior of like kind of the incubus or whatever, I don't know. But just kind of drawing somebody in through the guise of vulnerability, and then just kind of continually feeding off that as like a parasite. When it is that, for those who are drawn into that to help, to wake up to that, be mindful of that, to attentive, and not to be antagonistic and spiteful and hateful or angry about that. Just understand what it is, and then to understand the nature of the healing, or the nature of the hurt, and then the nature of the healing. So sometimes that might mean separation and like just clean break, clean separation, or it may mean like, yo, I've observed that you're doing this, and I think you might be doing this because of this reason. What do you think about that? And what do you think if you maybe tried this or that? Or I'm going to have to like adjust how I respond, because I have to be dutiful in tending to my own well-being as well, and in me continuing to enable or commiserate, it's harmful for myself. So I have to be mindful of that as well. So anyways, that's part of the psychological predatory nature of humans as well. Not everybody does it, and it may not be the most prevalent kind of thing, but it actually is rather tenacious, and it's actually probably further widespread than people care to consider. So the idea is being mindful of that, and again attending to our health and well-being collectively as well, because we all rights. The whole notion of the rhetoric of rights is something that's conferred upon a government, and it's basically something that the government is restricts itself from doing onto other people. So a right in itself, yeah, we got further than rights. We've got like we got responsibilities, but we also have we are deserving. How about that? We are deserving of well-being. We are deserving of wellness, as everyone is. So there's that. Now, going back to the predator-prey thing, here's the thing about it. Being a non-predator, that doesn't mean everything's hunky-dory. Because we can look at non-predators. We can look at herbivores. Hippopotami are some of the most ornery type of creatures on the African continent. The biggest man killers amidst the animal kingdom, aside from man itself. So just because an animal is an herbivore doesn't mean that it doesn't do nasty things. And particularly when it comes to mating. We can look at how the bulls go at each other. We can look at how the rams go at each other, sometimes to the death. So we know that herbivores can do some nasty, atrocious things to each other. So there's that consideration. There's that awareness, and that just being an herbivore don't mean it's a utopia, particularly for humanoids and those with a sentience for that type of inclination. So one is a matter of recognizing the difference between being a predator and being violently competitive or being violently ornery. So being a predator means that a person's livelihood, a person feeds itself, a person or a being feeds itself off of the life and or the suffering of another being. That's predatory. The violent competition or the territoriality, and additionally, they don't necessarily have to live. They don't need to do that to live directly. I'll phrase it better. The violence that occurs through that territoriality or through the mating rituals or those other types of interactions, that type of violence isn't necessary to sustain the lives of those beings. It's something that's done as part of the rituals of the competition, and additionally, but it's competitive. It's not a matter of being sustenance based or sustenance a requirement. So that's like the distinction between the two, predatory and competition. So when it comes to humanoids, this is the thing. Amidst our proclivities towards virtue and additionally principles, there's a consideration that when we do awaken to non-predatory and non-preyed upon life discipline, that we also have the proclivity towards being non-competitive, to cooperate with each other, and so that it's unnecessary to kill each other or to demean each other, to put each other down as some type of competitive advantage, to flash our whips and say one is better than the other, to flash our chains and say one is better than the other, to flash whatever as a way of getting a mate, as a way of acquiring additional things, because when we have that type of sentience, we recognize that those types of endeavors are predatory, effectively, because it's psychological. Now there is a certain amount of competition that's difficult for me to perceive being summarily evaporated, even amidst humanoid non-predators and non-prey. However, even in that competition, like for example, playing some football, that's competition. But even that competition is within a greater context and a greater experience of cooperation. And so it serves for that purpose. It helps to keep people fit. It gives people entertainment, a pastime. How you doing, bro? All right. If the door is locked, you might want to knock on it. Somebody might open it up for you. All right. So it's a matter of recognizing that even when we have that competition exists for a greater purpose, and that purpose, that idea of purpose, is what helps us to discern the difference between our needs and our wants. If it's our need, we don't have to justify it, like, yo, we need this. And when we're modest, when we like focus on genuinely what sustains ourselves, we can identify what a need is. And then when it comes time to a want, then we can start saying, what's the purpose of it? And that's where the purpose comes in, of like, do we need this? And if it's a question about do we need it, what purpose does it serve? What's the harm? What's the benefit? And that helps us to define whether we pursue or maintain that materiality or whatever that experience is. Those are some additional considerations in the walk of the non-predator prey, non-prey predator, however you like it. Additionally, and that's one of the things that distinguishes us from the pachyderms. I wouldn't necessarily say elephants. I have to learn further about the nature of the elephants, but particularly the buffalo, and additionally, is that proclivity towards cooperation. So this experience, this walk of non-predator prey, non-predator or prey, non-prey or predatory. Non-prey or predatory. In this walk, it's an ancient walk, like I said. However, in terms like a systemic way of doing it, it seems to be comparatively nascent. So, nascent meaning new. So, because of such, there's a process. There's like a development process to better experience that. And like I said, like the phenotype, we look very human, and additionally, we come from humans. And that sounds weird, but I'm just speaking matter of factly. But when we look at animals and like what distinguishes species from each other, or genus or familia, or whatever it is. Did you get in, bro?
No, they got me going around.
Ah, okay. However we classify the animal, the things we look at, like the appearance, that's one of the fundamental things. Yes. So when it comes to humanoid or earth being, non-prey or predator, you look just human. So what are you talking about? Human. However, that's not the only thing that distinguishes animals from each other. One of the things that also distinguishes is behavior. And so when we look at non-predatory behavior amongst humanoids, and the aggregate of humanoids, there's significant difference. And it may require some established, extended, continual observation to distinguish those differences, and to genuinely appreciate those differences. But there are fundamental differences. Communication may be similar, at least at this stage of mutual evolution. But there are additional things. Even actually, the communication may sound similar in terms of like utilizing similar language, and additionally. But even then, even when utilizing the same language, how the language is utilized can be observed as rather different when one is increasingly astute within the field of linguistics. I'm trying to think of the name of the discipline of Noam Chomsky. Whatever. It is what it is. So there are fundamental differences, and it can be anticipated that those differences become increasingly significant, like becoming increasingly evident and distinguished from each other as time progresses, as generations progress, and additionally. And again, it's not one better than the others, it's different. Are deers better than buffalo? Are zebra better than gazelle? Or are lions better than tigers? It's just different. Are lions better than gazelle? Are cheetahs better than antelope? It's just different. So that's the basic point I was getting to in terms of like the whole predatory thing, is that just because it's non-predator doesn't mean it's perfect. There's still competition. That competition can be tenacious. Yet for humanoids, earth beings, who have a further inclination and awareness and proclivity, there's the consideration, the guidance for even the competition to exist within a greater context and a greater understanding, a greater respect and purpose of cooperation. So that's the main joint. Now, that's pretty much what I had to share. It's half hour this joint. I might wrap it up soon at this point. I shared something recently about doctors again. It's very quiet again this afternoon. Same spot. In a number of different fora, combos, or whatever, I talk about um, authoritarianism and imposition and social hierarchy, and additionally, um, recently, within this past week, I share a spiel about society as a mountain. Um, so I'll share that here, see how long it takes, and then think about wrapping it up after this. So, society as a mountain. The idea is that within society there's a hierarchy. It doesn't necessarily mean it's legit or whatever. Like it's not the highest nature of our existence, but there is a certain social hierarchy within society. We talk about class, caste, the different duties: priests, kings, workers, administrators, and untouchables, and additionally, so within American society, particularly, we can identify a certain caste system as well, and in this caste system, first of all, we can look at the caste system as a mountain, that almost like a pyramid, effectively, but this scenario, this euphemism, is a mountain, and at the apex of the mountain is the landowners, the land quote-unquote owners, those holding titles to land. So it's not the government, it's not the CEOs or the corporations per se, it's not even the doctors, it's the land title holders in American society, in the American construct. So I've talked to this effect already. Now, for those who have an experience with mountains, many may recognize that many mountains, particularly the higher mountains, can be above the clouds, and that the peaks of the mountains, the apex, reach above low-lying clouds. Some of the clouds can go above, but mountains can go beyond the clouds. So, in that recognition, we apply that to this scenario, to this euphemism, and that the clouds in this euphemism are indeed the government, are the corporations, the CEOs, and even the doctors. This cloud serves a function. It provides a barrier between the people below the clouds, on the lower portion of the mountain, and the people above the clouds towards the apex, the peak of the mountains. It keeps attention away from the land title holders and in the clouds, so to speak. Hollywood is in the clouds too, and so the different entities that I mentioned: doctors, government, politicians, CEOs, additionally, even universities, all have different mechanisms, work in different ways, and play different roles. Some, obviously cooperate with each other, but also vying for influence and leverage with each other as well. Some with ambitions of ascending up further up the mountain. But that's the clouds. And again, it obscures the vision of the apex amidst the people who are below the clouds. So, now my experience with the apex of the mountains is extremely modest. In terms of interacting with people, and additionally, in terms of this scenario, and get to the righteous mountain towards the end. So, anyways, my experience is extremely modest. My experience within the clouds, in the hierarchies, the mechanics, the machination, and additionally, is comparatively moderate, I'll say. I have a fair amount of experience in interacting with people in those situations. However, I am situated. I live within the tree line, which is below the clouds. Now the thing about the clouds is that some of the entities within the clouds, particularly the governments and the politicians, are very extremely beholden to the land title holders in this scenario. And so there's that attachment between the land title holders and the governments, and additionally. However, many of these additional entities, particularly doctors, even corporations, exist in the clouds and in a way that extends towards other mountain peaks, meaning i.e. other nations, multinational corporations, doctors having fluidity of movement. Doctors are certified within a nation to practice, but doctors also can move about and also communicate and cooperate with doctors across borders, and additionally. So the influence of doctors and the machination is beyond any one peak amidst the mountain range of Earth. So that's part of the nature of the clouds. Now the thing about it is that as high up and as potentatus as the peak dwellers seem to be, they need sustenance. And the thing about the tree line, to describe what that is for those who have less of an awareness of that, the tree line is the point of a mountain where trees grow, grass grows, or there's vegetation, and it sustains life. There's water, it sustains life. However, at a higher altitude, the higher altitude does not sustain life, does not sustain the plant life, and additionally, so there is no plant life, there's no trees, there are no animals that live there. That's the tree line. So anything above the tree line, it's rock, it's snow, it's comparatively desolate in terms of terrain because life doesn't grow above the tree line on a mountain. So that's the nature of the mountain, and that's what a tree line is. So as potentatus as the dwellers of the peaks may seem, they still need sustenance, they still need materiality, they still need life from the tree line, and they rely directly upon the clouds to procure that sustenance. And so that's part of the nature. And so it's even then it's symbiotic, even within its predatory tendencies. But it's beneficial to recognize that, to be aware of that. So we got these movements up and down amidst the mountain, between the tree line and the apex, the peak, and then we have the movement within the clouds around the mountain, but then we have the movement within the clouds towards other mountains, and additionally. And so all of this is in flux, and at this moment, amidst the conditions that are being described, we can see the fragilities within each of these entities, within each of these components of our biosphere, and the nature of the interdependency, the balance amidst the leverages or the attempted leverages. So it's a matter of studying that, understanding it, honoring that, and attuning with that, being harmonious with that. That doesn't mean acquiescing to somebody else's application of leverage or imposition, and it doesn't mean imposing or leveraging others either. It means a matter of understanding, and then in the understanding being harmonious, that harmoniousness being peace, being happy, being prosperous. So anyways, it's some abstraction, but the sketches are there. Now, when it comes to the righteous mountain, the thing about the righteous mountain is there's everybody has the propensity, everybody has the prerogative, the will, or the ability to go up or down the mountain. There are no obstructions that are imposed by others. So it is a shared mountain. And if cats want to be increasingly righteous, go up the mountain. And that's one element. That's the one fundamental element about the righteous mountain. The other fundamental element about the righteous mountain is that when people interact with each other, see each other, they are exactly on the same level of the mountain. So when it comes to self-righteousness and judgmentalism and everything else, you're at the same level of this righteous mountain that I am. So what you talking about? We might have different practices, and you might be nicer in one way than I am, and I might be nicer in another way than you are, but we're on the same level of this mountain. So we don't even front it like you're better. Don't front like you're worse. We're on the same level, and you can take a step above on the mountain, be like, oh, look at me now, but still, seriously. And then further, like on that mountain, there's no talking down on cats who are lower at the mountain, and there's no bowing down to cats who are up above the mountain. It's just a matter of like, oh, if you want to be that way, keep on walking up. Everybody can walk. Everybody's mobile on this mountain. Like I said, the same thing applies in terms of the apex and the peak. Above the tree lines ain't no food. Life ain't getting sustained for very long on the height of the mountain, on the peak of the mountain. And so each of us finds our own plateau to settle within, and our own migrations to settle within. And ain't no place for judgment or self-righteousness. How about that? On the righteous mountain. Because it's false. It's just a matter of recognizing things for what it is, and us for who we are, and whatever deficiency we experience. Now, I could end it on that, but I share this other thought that occurs to me recently. Marveling at the materiality amidst my 10-4, my 10-4. And this is a little bit like changing the subject a little bit, but it's still connected, still related. And the wording might be somewhat clumsy. It's the concept, but actually it's not even the concept. It's like the feel. It's the feel of it. And I guess that's what I'm basically going back to, like the feeling of the curve of the earth. There's also the notion of feeling the movement of the earth. Instead of when looking at a soleil rise or a soleil set, rather than saying soleil rise or soleil set, it's a matter of the soleil being revealed and the soleil being hidden. But either way, rather than perceiving that as the soleil moving itself, recognizing that it's the earth that's moving, it's the earth that's rotating. And when we recognize that, and when we align ourselves like with east and west and north and south, and we can see what direction the equator is, what direction the polarities are in, then we can better see, engage, and feel and experience the movement of the earth, exactly as we're looking at it, as the soleil is right above. So part of that notion of that consciousness of where we are on this earth, in this universe, we look at the buildings and we can be impressed by the buildings. We can be intimidated by the buildings. We can be impressed by ourselves and intimidated by ourselves. We can try impressing and intimidating others and doing what we want or what we perceive ourselves needing. We can try flexing the things around us, our connection with the things around us, for that purpose, for that end as well. But it's undone. So as I look at the buildings around me, and I think about all the work, all the things that go into making a building. I'll do a panoramic. I can't see if this is actually showing stuff, but I'm presuming. Actually, let me lower this down. So I think that's showing basically what's happening around here. So as I'm looking at these buildings, and additionally, architecture, engineering, infrastructure, the grid, cranes, concrete, steel, construction, all these things, elevators, stairs, freight trucks, freight trains that bring the materiality and everything that goes into constructing these buildings and maintaining these buildings. It's very formidable. It's awesome. Here's a consideration. To cultivate our respect. This is what I'm attempting to do. This is the first time I articulate this, so it's first run. Here we go. If I'm looking at this building I see in front of me, and if I consider any type of notion of greatness within myself, as a way of trying to impose my will upon others, to have some kind of sway or influence over others. First, I can consider the fragility of my life, and I'm going to depersonalize this and just make it third person. A man can look at the building and just recognize his own vulnerability, and that all it takes is a sliver, a shard, a fragment of one of those window panels, just to pierce the torso and the heart and end the life of a man. So as pompous and mighty as a man might be in thinking of himself as being the creator, the constructor of any edifice or whatever, it takes only a fragment of that edifice to end the life of that man. So that should provide a certain pause. And there's not any big deal or whatever. Yeah, whatever. But here's a further consideration about cultivating respect. As formidable as the buildings seem and are, there are additional elements and there's additional nature. We can think about a building imploding upon an individual, upon a man, ending the life of a man. We can think about all the different scenarios of destruction amidst the construction, and how fragile a man's life is. And how fragile the construction that a man provides is, because the earth can move a wee bit here, a wee bit there, and crumble the buildings. Winds can come in. Winds do come in. The earth does move. The winds come in and carves out the stones, raises the buildings. Water comes in. Flood. I initially considered going into details, but that seemed, when I was starting getting into details, that seemed a little bit fatalistic, and so I want to abstain from doing that. My point is saying this, for this part, is that as fantastic the feats are of mankind in terms of construction and destruction, there is construction and destruction that exists beyond the capacity, the feats of mankind. This exists within the earth, the tectonic plates of the earth. It exists within the regular rainfalls and the current patterns of oceans, and additionally floods. It exists within the wind, not even just tornadoes or hurricanes, but even just regular winds. And additionally, it exists within the light, the evaporation, the heat, the cold with the deprivation. All these elements have a much further destructive capacity than man. Even when man attempts utilizing and manipulating these elements for such purposes, the nature of it exists way beyond the capacity of man and science. So the point is other than shock and awe, because there's also a greater constructive nature with these elements as well. We can look at the trees that emerge every year, the newly sprouting leaves, the green, the flowers that sustains life, that seems so fragile but yet so enduring and persevering. Gambaru. It's a powerful force. It's a love. It's creative. It's constructive. It's continual. Amidst all the challenges, and additionally, there's a wisdom. That's part of the further nature of creation. It's part of the greater nature from God. And when we observe this greater nature, the blossoms on the tree, the light reflecting from the bushes, the innumerable blades of grass that are growing, and additionally, it's awesome. It shouldn't shock us, but it is awesome. So, this ain't the most articulate of joints, but the point that I'm getting to is this. It's a matter of having respect for it as part of our harmony, our relationship with it, honoring our relationship with nature and with each other. Man and earth, man and plant, man and animal, man and woman. And when it comes to man and woman, particularly man's respect towards woman, it is beneficial for a man to recognize that all of these elements, all of these natures, all of these proclivities, the buildings, the air, the water, the light, the shade, the soil, the earth, the seeds, the tree, all of this exists within the womb of a woman. The universe exists. The propensity for perpetuity exists within the womb of a woman. And it is dutiful for a man to be mindful of that when looking at a woman, to be respectful for his own sake, for his own benefit, when looking at a woman. I say that to myself as much as I say that to any other dude. But even in me saying it to myself, it does warrant saying it to others as well. So that's what I do. Now, simultaneously, within man, there is also that same infinity, that same propensity. And it is beneficial for a man to be mindful of that, and in how he invests his seed as well. It is our life force. And there is a divine purpose, there is a divine presence that exists beyond the womb of a woman and the seed of a man. And it's a matter of being respectful and reverent for the aggregate. So, like I said, it ain't the most articulate or whatever, but it's the idea that I'm conveying. And so I'm going to leave it at that. And keep it under an hour. So there it is. Oh, and we still got storage, presumably. And we still got time. Or actually, we still got battery left. So we're gonna wrap this joint. So there it is. I'll say, in terms of the weekly consideration, the verbal recording of the weekly consideration and the weekly inspiration, I'm gonna hold off on that at this point because that's a lot. Where we are continuing with the stuff that we're doing with Asana Ashram and Mélangé Ethos Institute, including a monthly newsletter on the new moon, and having a membership. And for anyone who has an interest in the weekly inspiration and the weekly consideration being recorded, that may be something considered for the beginning of the year, coming up in a few months, God willing. And for members and supporters who do have an interest in that verbal weekly consideration and inspiration, such individuals are welcome to communicate that interest. So, but yeah, it's a lot, and I actually have to concentrate on some other things like food and utilities. Ain't got no phone at this moment, and ain't got no internet. Making some arrangements for that. However, like I said, that all takes time, effort, energy, concentration, and so I have to be mindful of that. That's much of it for the moment. Yeah, still another hour. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, beer, zaijian, adios, te chakaris, isimpin na asabubo, kilo Wilfred. One love, and peace, happiness, and liberation.